Hi.
Hi. Welcome to Knitting a Good Yarn. My name is Jackie.
I'm Carmen.
And we have decided to start yet another knitting podcast.
There aren't enough.
No.
One more.
So we are coming to you from the Mississaugas of the Credit in Southern Ontario. We are both knitters and friends.
Yes.
And
recent friends.
Recent friends.
Instagram connected us and then we found out that we lived in the same town.
Yes. And we thought that we would come on basically to share, standard, what we're wearing, what we're working on, finished objects, etc. But really, I'm fascinated by the stories behind our knits. And I'm hoping that we can share some of the stories behind our knits and that will inspire you as well.
Yeah.
Carmen, why did you want to start this podcast?
Why did I want to start a podcast? Because I'm passionate about knitting too, and I love it. I love the designs that designers come up with and being able to share that and just my love for it, my enthusiasm. So I felt like this is, when I watch podcasts, it gets me really inspired. So I was thinking, well, maybe I need to do something like that, but I didn't want to do it by myself. So what happened?
So we met on Instagram, but also through the lovely ladies of the Caddy Jacks Knits podcast.
Wonderful.
They were both patrons and have followed them for a while. And once a year they run something called a bingo ball. And so we met at the bingo ball, realized at that point that we live 15 to 20 minutes away from one another. We have a ton of stuff in common.
Yes.
And one of the things that I love about Carmen, not only are you super enthusiastic about knitting, but your knitting process is so incredibly different from mine.
Yes.
And so we thought
that
it might be fun to come on and sort of share our knitting process as a way of inspiring you to find a way to knit in a way that sort of honors who you are, and also the process of like creative play and self-discovery that started as we started to knit things together.
Yes.
And to knit similar projects together and sort of see what you're doing and what I'm doing and how different that is.
And how different, yeah. And how at the end of it, they're both amazing, but so different.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we could probably say off the start that Jackie's much more intentional, really thinks about things, has, plan for things.
Plans.
Not rigid, but like has plans.
Lots of plans.
And I am kind of the opposite end of things, which is like, let's just, let's do it.
Yeah.
And
And that's kind of how this podcast happened.
Yeah.
Which is that you were like, want to do a podcast? And I was like, well,
what's involved in that? I'm like, I don't know.
And I planned and organized what that would mean for a while. And this was like a couple of months ago.
Yep.
And so I'd been dream podcasting in my mind. And then we got invited, voluntold. I don't know actually how it happened. But essentially there was a picture that was posted on the Honor och Air.
I know we're gonna butcher these beautiful Swedish words.
Yes. Instagram page of this gorgeous sweater that was knit by Ellen, who's one of the staff who produces Nutiden yarn. And Carmen, you asked about whether or not there was an English version of the pattern, because she basically knit it out of this like beautiful vintage Swedish knitting book that she got from the library.
Yes.
And spontaneously you asked, is there an English version? And this is one of those happy social media circumstances in which someone was like, yes, there is a pattern. And then somehow
how did this all happen?
Somehow a group of us decided that we were going to run a knit along.
Yeah, well, I think, so I was like, I don't even think I said, is there an English pattern? I said, I wish there was.
Yes.
And then another person came in and was like, there is actually an English pattern. So then I'm like, well, I'm gonna knit it. And then some other people had seen it and came in on it and were like, well, we want to knit it too. And then I think it might have been Loretta.
Might have been Loretta. Yeah.
Oh, and what's Loretta's podcast name?
Knit My Way Home.
Thank you. See, this is why what's Loretta's thing? She had said we should do a knit along, and then of course it's like, yes, of course I'm going to do a knit along. Jackie, are you in? And then it kind of developed.
Yeah, so we thought that we would spend this episode, which I'm calling like episode 0.5.
Okay, I actually want to know, why is it not 0? Why is it 0.5?
Because, well, do people start at episode 0? I just assume people start at episode 1. And then I thought, this isn't really our first episode, even though it is, because this is really an episode in which we are hoping to share our process of this knit along and what we're hoping to knit, and whether you participate in the knit along, which we're going to talk about, or not.
We'll get there.
We'll get there. That maybe just sharing our process is going to inspire you to play with some color work, to consider some unspun yarn, to
go down that rabbit hole.
Go down the rabbit hole of maybe finding a project that you get to knit your way, to make something that you love, whether that's with a pattern or without a pattern. But it's 0.5 because I feel like it's not all of the things that we normally would do in a knitting podcast.
I love that, because I'm like, and what are we gonna do in a knitting podcast?
Really
this seems like
well, we don't have, like, it's like I don't have a work in progress. I don't have like a something. So 0.5.
0. I like it. My thing with 0 is I was thinking about, you know, in Europe, like the main, like the floor, first floor is always 0,
oh, yeah.
and then it's like 1 and 2. That was
yeah.
So 0.5.
We're
halfway it's like
there.
A Harry Potter thing. Like, anyway. We will get to we may get distracted a bit.
Yeah.
Because of me.
Because we both are sitting in front of an epic amount of Nutiden.
You can't quite see it.
So
and this is just the beginning.
This is just the beginning. So one of the things that Carmen and I share is a love, borderline obsession with Nutiden yarn. Which, if you're not aware, is made by Honor och Air. Everything that we talk about is going to be in the description box below once we figure that out, as well as in our Ravelry group, we'll have a thread that includes all the show notes so that you can search the things that we talk about.
Awesome. Did I know?
No.
I'm so glad. Amazing.
And what we thought we would do is share some of the projects that we have made out of Nutiden yarn, because the whole sort of inspiration around this knit along and this particular episode began with Nutiden yarn. And so I saved a picture, I think, of this sweater that started it all.
Let's see. How come it's not loaded? Oh, are you on my Wi-Fi?
Nope.
Probably not.
Newbie
Episode
podcasters.
0/0.5.
Okay.
This will be awesome. You're just gonna wait in suspense for what this will look like.
So Carmen, why don't you tell everybody about what the plan is for the knit along?
The knit along. Okay. We're talking to the person who knows very little about the plan.
Here we go.
Oh, here we go.
So this is the sweater that hopefully you can see.
Oh, it's so good.
So it's a colorwork sweater that's knit in Nutiden yarn, and the intention of the knit along, which is also a work in progress, we haven't actually decided on anything except for the name, the start date, which we're going to tell you. It's
we have a name?
Inspired by Ellen.
Oh!
It's the Inspired by Ellen knit along.
Oh,
Thank
I
you,
love
Loretta. That was Loretta's idea.
Loretta. Beautiful. Beautiful.
And so the intention behind the knit along is to knit the sweater that we showed, if you want to. But to really use this particular motif, I should try to show this again. It's a free pattern, so I can actually show this to you. This particular motif to knit something that you love. And so that might be a sweater, it could be a cowl, it could be a hat, mittens. I've gotten a little obsessed with this pattern, thinking of all the things that I could make with it. But it is about color work.
Yes.
There is an element of color work, and you're invited to join us for this knit along, whether you knit in Nutiden or whatever you have in your stash. The idea is there's this motif, and that you're invited to find an expression of the motif that serves what you feel like knitting. And we are planning to start the knit along on September 1st. We are actually filming this very early July.
Yeah, July 2nd.
Because this
we're dying.
lovely human is going to be flying away from her stash
Yes.
for a period of time, for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to be able to share the stash and share all the color pairings that we're thinking about.
Yes.
Because you can't take it with you.
Well, I can't take it with me. Plus, I'm going to start with all these fun colors that I would do, but then I'm going to go to the UK and just fall in love with all these wools over there.
Yeah.
So we will just see what ends up happening in September.
So, what are you wearing?
Oh, I am wearing the Bjork top by Woodlands Knits. Liv Alrin. All of this is why show notes are going to be good for me, because I'm going to forget some things. But this is a cute little summer top. It is actually pretty good. It's just it's pretty hot outside right now. Usually if it's a little bit cooler, it's good to wear. But I wanted to wear it because this is in Nutiden and in 2 colors that I would say really work very nicely together. So it's Harden is the kind of burnt orange, and then Ljus, which was a special colorway from December. Yeah, so I just thought this would be one way to show like a couple colors that could be put together.
And so do you remember what gauge you knit this on? You knit it single strand?
No, I didn't. It's single strand, yes, single strand. It's all, I do have Ravelry that I try to update, so you can get that
description box
info there. But
essentially it's a fairly, like, what would you say, like fingering or like DK
it's
kind of?
Yeah, fingering, definitely a fingering weight. I think the original pattern is, yeah, it's just a lovely, Liv does such beautiful kind of designs. I don't know if you can see this, but it has sort of a square neckline. Yeah, just lovely. So I thought,
yeah,
one way to show one of the Nutiden yarns. And I think what you're going to talk about is Nutiden is interesting in its way of you can kind of knit anything you want with it, from lace up to, well, anything bulky, double bulky, like you can, because you can just keep adding strands. If you just see, it's all unspun, so you just knit with 1, knit with 2, 3, 4. Yeah, we'll talk more about.
Yeah.
And what is this gorgeousness that you're wearing?
So this is Annelise Autumn Shawl, which is a pattern by Inez Sang, who's Sang knits on Instagram. Check the description box. And this I knit as a first-time test knitter.
That's right.
Thank you, Carmen.
I may have one.
So this is a shawl that is also knit single strand. And so I thought I would show it for a couple of reasons. One is so that you can see that knitted single strand, there's really lovely stitch definition. You can do lace. This is a ginormous shawl. This beautiful lace edge. Yeah.
Oh, it's so beautiful. Oh my gosh.
And
so airy.
Also to show you the drape.
Yes.
To show you the drape of the shawl. So this is maybe one of my favorite things that I've ever
It's like a
knit
cloud.
ever.
It's gorgeous.
We're showing you the wrong side.
There we go.
Here's
Episode
0.5. And to also show you like how different something can look on the basis of the colors that you choose.
Beautiful, right? Gorgeous. Should I do it in the same orientation? How are you holding yours? This I think
is
you had it this
podcasting.
Right? Did you have the bottom one there? So this is in obviously a darker colors. This is Dvala, which is it was coming out very well. It's a kind of it's green, has a gray sort of undertone to it. And then Saliget, which is a very, very sunshiny yellow. Oh God, look at that. Oh gosh.
I love the shawl so much.
Oh, it's amazing. And every test knitter's version was so gorgeous.
Yeah.
So this is a must knit for sure.
And so I would say that this was one of the projects that really inspired me, invited me to consider color work that is outside of my comfort zone, which you will discover is basically gray, white, gray, and more gray.
Yes. Muted, very neutral colors, which and I generally don't. I kind of maybe go with a little bit more contrast in general, but I do love
The other thing, I'm totally gonna steal this.
Yes.
The other thing that's really fascinating to me about this shawl and this yarn is how, I mean, both of them are super, super drapey, but yours has a completely different feeling.
Yes.
Than mine. So if you're not familiar with Nutiden yarn, they come out in collections, and each of the colorways are sort of a different blend. They are all made out of sort of Swedish heritage wool, but the blends that make up each of these plates is a little bit different from colorway to colorway. And so although we knit both of these single-stranded at the same gauge.
Yep. I was actually careful with this.
Yeah, me too. How it turned out is completely different. Yeah. And so one of the things that we're hoping this KAL will offer people the opportunity for is to play with gauge and to play with knitting whatever yarn you're using, whether it's Nutiden or another Unspun, because oh my God, there are so many new, amazing, exciting Unspun
Canadian ones too.
Yarns.
Wild in the Woods out in
yep,
want to try that.
Is that part of, at least for me, loving the process of knitting and then wearing my knits is about finding a fabric that feels really good. And so the love of Nutiden is totally about the amazing colors and the color combinations, but it's also about the fabric and the ability to work with it in so many ways to find a fabric that is pleasing to you and pleasing for sort of the season and the purpose and what it is that you're wanting to do with it.
I love that. And actually, as you're speaking, I'm like, because you thought through that you were going to show both of them. Yeah. I did not think this through that Universe did offer us this opportunity, in that I also knit the Bjork top. Well, this one was called the Bjork Pullover, which was the winter version. So it first came out this, and this is actually Nutiden knit double. So I held this double-stranded, and then I held this single-stranded. I think this, I was gonna take this off anyway. I don't know, can I take this off?
You can totally take it off.
Probably should have gone off camera, but I wanna try to see if I can show you the difference in the feel. So I don't know if you can kind of see how light that is and like how it feels. And then this, I don't know, well, see, it's still drapey, it's so beautiful, but it's like a squishy, like full sweater. You know, this is something, when I wear this one, we were talking about like what the best time is to wear this, because it's such a warm sweater, and I find in the early spring and then probably in the fall I'll also be doing this with like a down vest over is perfection, because it gets up high and it keeps my arms perfect, and then just a little bit of extra warmth.
Well, it's almost like it's, you know, like it's 2 layers of Nutiden held double-stranded, right?
So yeah, like
so
4
it
layers.
Makes a really
right.
beautiful, nice thick connection.
Yeah, I was going to show exactly. Well, I don't know. My floats are. I obviously don't care.
Yeah.
Well, oh, and actually, okay. So I want to talk just really briefly about Nutiden too. That's so unique. We all hate. Well, I don't know if everybody else hates. I hate. I hate weaving it in. Yeah. I just hate it. I hate it. It's such, and to the point where that would actually stop me from doing some colorwork projects because it's too annoying. In Nutiden, it breaks very easily as you're knitting along, like, or, well, it doesn't always, but as you get used to it, it breaks less, but it can kind of just tear apart if you see. It's just so easy, right, to pull it. Although it's really funny, like, well, I don't know, some of them, if you pull it really tight like this, it doesn't break, which is funny, but if you tie it. Anyway, so that'll go as you're knitting, but all you have to do is just take, like, it breaks, and then you just take your yarn and you just kind of overlap it with the yarn you already had. I used to do that. Now I don't even. I just start knitting along, and I leave these ends, and they just end up felting themselves into the sweater after. So it's just this dream of knitting, like no work after. Which, if you haven't noticed in 20 minutes yet, I don't like a lot of work. I don't like to be like having to do a lot of stuff. So anyway, I'm talking a long time about this, but this is Nutiden held double, but then colorwork double. So this is something to think about in our new sweater and the one that we're gonna do. I'm actually going in between whether I wanna do it held single, or held double, because that's actually 2 Nutiden strands or 4 Nutiden strands. So you get a much warmer, this would almost be like a bulky.
It's like a coat.
It's like a coat.
It's like a coat.
It's just.
I'm actually gonna look and check your Ravelry to see what the, did I plan this? I sure did.
Okay.
It's already open.
Yay, Jackie!
No, it's another one. To look at the gauge.
Oh yeah, I think it was 16?
Yeah, like it's 16 stitches per 4 inches.
Yeah.
So to me, that's like a worsted yarn.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, absolutely. But it just has a very squishy feel, and this one has a beautiful like folded collar, and that's in Lunet and Vasen, which were colorways in the spring, I think. Anyway.
So one of the things that I love about Unspun, so I'll tell you a little bit about sort of my knitting story, which is that I taught myself to knit off YouTube like, I don't know, 10 plus years ago. And had knit a couple things like here and there. I'd done like the acrylic, and then I'd done sort of started to get into woolier wools. Like I knit something out of Drops, Air, and Cascade, 220, sort of like very workhorse, classic, accessible price point yarns, at least in Canada. It never stuck.
Yeah,
it never stuck for me.
Fun to feel.
And then I was lucky to travel to Iceland. And that was the first time that I got exposed to kind of unspun yarn. So the Icelandic equivalent to this is Plotulopi. And there was something about being able to knit with something that is incredibly forgiving, in the sense that it's fluffy and it's got a little bit of a halo, so your stitches don't need to be perfect.
Oh yeah.
Right? And also what was fascinating to me was the idea that I could knit at various gauges, because one of the things that was so hard about sort of working with spun yarn, is that the yarn knits at a particular gauge, and so I would love a yarn and then I would knit it up and it would be a particular gauge, and that gauge would not match whatever project I had bought said yarn for.
Right.
Whereas any unspun, whether it's Nutiden or Plotulopi, or there's a new one out of Spain called Manchelopi, like tons, is that you can knit it at 1 strand, you can knit it in 2 strands, or you can knit it even in 3 strands, depending on how much you want to knit. And then also that even within sort of single, double, or triple strands, you can get different gauges. So you can knit a single strand project on a tiny needle and it would come out in a particular way, and because it sort of blooms and fluffs, you can choose your preferred needle size. Knit the yarn in your preferred needle size to get sort of preferred fabric. And then it became kind of a backwards process in terms of how I would end up knitting projects, because I would knit for like, this is the needle I feel like using and this is the fabric that I love, and then I would find a project that fit the gauge.
I will never be like, well, maybe not, maybe I will. She inspires me so much, but like, do you see what I mean? It's so intentional. Like, I would like to use this needle size, and then I want this kind of fabric, and I want it to speak to me like this, and I'm like, yeah, those are great.
And then sometimes
I just like this pattern.
But then sometimes it's also sort of seeing what other people knit and then being like, oh, I want that. And then finding a way that you can make that work for you.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely. Which I think is what one of your reasons for this podcast is. Like, one thing that you'd like to do, which I am so excited to participate in and learn from, is to, like, Jackie actually really thinks about the fabric you're making, how it's gonna fit, because the one benefit of knitting is that you can actually make it fit your body exactly as you like. If you put the work into doing that, I do not, but I'm doing more of that as we go along. But yeah, you're gonna speak about that, and I think even with this this KAL, to kind of think about how to make this sweater, which has a pattern, but actually using the pattern as sort of a springboard to figure out how it's gonna fit and exactly what you're looking for. So
maybe what we'll do is we'll talk a little bit about the sweater that we're knitting for the knit along, the different sort of options in terms of how you can knit it, and then we'll start to see all the wonderful color combinations that you put together.
Yeah, I will show these, but this took 3 minutes, and I was like, and I have a million pieces. So, I mean, one thing I will say about Nutiden is that if you're working, so all that I'm actually offering right now is Nutiden, but like, hopefully the colors you can find them in other places. Although as I say that, you really can't, because Nutiden has this like unbelievable magic. I don't know if we can show.
Which one are you gonna pick?
I'm gonna pick, oh, here, see, went over here. I don't know if this is actually going to, this is called Live. And if you can see, oh, I don't know if it's fully picking up. It's not, Nutiden is never just one color. It's a million different strands, all separately dyed, then all combined. So you can't really fully decide on something else, but you can sort of get an idea of like, maybe I would go with something a little this color with something like that.
Yeah, and like, even if you aren't, you're not feeling like knitting a sweater in the middle of July or whenever this comes out, hoping that sort of these color combinations might inspire you to find other color combinations, whatever it is that you're knitting.
Yes.
So the sweater that inspired this knit along, I'm gonna put it up again for you to see. So this sweater was knit much like, as a sort of like thick woolly experience, in the sense that there were 2 strands held together, and so the gauge that came out to was 18 stitches per 4 inches. So, and Ellen knit this sweater sort of off gauge from what was included in the pattern in this like Swedish knitting book, which Loretta is actually ordering.
Yes.
And so you can check out her podcast, and she will have a way more organized transmission of all the information. But yes, it's meant to be a bulky knit project. Ellen modified it.
Oh, it was meant to be bulky.
It was meant to be bulky,
because the other one, the English version, is not.
Yes.
Oh, there we go.
So it was meant to be bulky. Ellen said that in order to knit it in pattern, she would have had to hold 3 strands of Nutiden together. So
that would have been warm.
That would have been really warm.
That would have been a beast.
Even for
like you could go skiing in that with no coat.
That would be a coat, right? So it was supposed to be knit bulky. She modified it to sort of 18 stitches.
Yeah.
And then the other option is to knit it at a single strand gauge.
Yes.
Which is the free pattern that includes the motif which I showed, is a pattern that is for basically
was it? I thought it was for
fingering. Fingering.
Didn't
or
it have that? I don't know.
We'll include it below.
But
essentially, part of the knit along is going to include some Zoom meetings, and also we'll keep sort of talking about it on the podcast in terms of how it is to, if you want to knit a sweater, knit it either bottom up or top down and adjust it for the gauge that you want. So you're going to go through this.
Top down?
I'm thinking about doing top down.
You're amazing.
Because top down you can try on.
So much better, but it just means you got to do all this math.
Yeah.
I just love it. I love her.
There's not that much math though, and so this is one of the things that we're hoping to do as part of the knit along, is to have a couple of Zoom meetings, or to sort of record, I don't even want to say the word tutorial, but just a conversation about how it is that you adjust that for the sweater. And I have plans to knit a cowl first.
Smart.
To decide whether I want to knit it single-stranded or double-stranded, because a sweater is a huge commitment.
It is.
And I've knit some single-stranded projects before, and I have to really, really love the color work portion of it.
Yes, because this is all color work.
Because it's a full color work
break
sweater. But I did do this thing. Yeah, it's over there, where I knit some swatches.
Yes, you did.
I didn't tell you.
Of course you did. I love it. I don't even knit swatches, even with the sweaters.
You don't knit swatches ever?
No, I hardly ever do.
Okay, so Carmen is like a prolific test knitter.
I am. I knit swatches when I need to, but I don't even always with my test knits.
So
it works itself out. It's fine.
I basically knit a swatch to see what I wanted in terms of fabric, and what I wanted in terms of
amazing. I'm gonna sneak
the texture and the feel.
Oh yes.
And so what I will say from just knitting sort of the little swatches is to say that if this is your first time exploring color work, I actually think that this is a wonderful motif to explore, because the sort of number of stitches between one color and another color is super ideal in that you're not going to have to sort of carry long floats or learn how to catch your floats. It's really quite meditative, and I knit one swatch and then I didn't need to look at the pattern anymore.
Oh yes, that's key. Love those.
You can,
because you want to take place, you know, you take your knitting places.
Yeah. So this is, I thought that this would be interesting, right? 3 different colorways. I knit all of these in a on a US 10.
Wow.
And these are steam blocked, and I managed to get, I have 3 different gauges. They're somewhere between I think it's like 17 and 19.
Wow.
Quite like it.
It's beautiful. And are these all double?
They're all double.
Wow.
They're all double, but
you can tell, like, look at how, like, look at that. I mean, you can't really tell, I guess, when you're doing it on here, but trust me, it's very different. This is much lighter. Not lighter, they're the same, I guess. Anyway,
yeah.
I'm not being very helpful.
But part of the reason, I would say, living in southwestern Ontario, it gets cold here.
Yes.
But I don't love a really, really heavy knit.
I don't either.
And so one of the things about working with Unspun is that because it's sort of airy and lofty in this way, is that you can knit, you know, double-stranded color work, and still get a really light, fluffy, airy fabric. Yes. Which is really nice if you are someone who likes to hike, who needs the warmth, but also kind of wants the airflow.
Absolutely. And yeah, the Unspun yarn, it really is incredibly, like, it's so much lighter. Even if you think like this in a like a spun yarn would be so much heavier. Like, I think this is only 300 grams, 330, something like that. Like, whereas some of the other ones it would be a lot heavier, 500 some.
So Ellen shared some of her project details with us for the KAL. So she knit full double-stranded Nutiden, the full sweater for a 94 centimeter bust, and she used less than 350. Yes. Which, from a Nutiden point of view, and I find Nutiden Plotulopi, Plotulopi just being probably the most affordable and easily accessible unspun yarn, quite similar in terms of gauge. Like, you could go head to head. Yes. So that's like 3 plates. Yeah. 4 plates. 4 plates. 4 plates for a 94 centimeter bust. I think if you, I think you could easily knit the sweater with 5 plates of unspun. Yeah. Just across sizes. Across sizes. Yeah, absolutely. And hers was actually quite, I think, from what looking, I didn't see it on, but it looks like it's a fairly long. Yeah, it's not cropped. It's a tunic length, like standard sweater tunic length sort of thing. So, yeah. Want to see some color combinations? Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I do want to ask you, Carmen, about your process of pairing colors.
Thank you. Well, how do I pair colors? At first I look at them and some just pop out to me, but most of the time what I end up with actually is the universe suggesting colors to me, because it'll be just 2 things I'll think of. Actually, this one, I was originally going to knit this with, I was going to use the pinky. It's pink, it's pink on its own, but once it's combined with this, it looks kind of purple. But a pink with kind of a very dark color. I don't think I have it here. And then I was knitting another sweater in this, and I had gone downstairs and I'd grabbed both projects, and like they were just sitting on the couch, and I was just looking at the 2 like together and saying, okay, no, I gotta start over. Like, these have to go together. So a lot of times, even in this, I pulled up some colors that I really liked. And then even as they sit on the table, they're combined with some other pairings, and I'm going, oh, but that, like, you know, like, oh, I could put these ones together, even though they weren't ones that I had originally picked. The other thing that I do think about, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to say this very well in words if I have the language for it, but is I think about I don't know if it's the value of colors, but that they should be similar. So for example, I know Jackie's like, you would combine like Grodd with Infinitive, and I'm like, yeah, like, of course, I think these look absolutely gorgeous together. To me, these two feel similar, like they work together. Their value or whatever has a similar feel.
Like they're equally saturated?
Yes. Whereas this doesn't to me. So this is Lola with Grodd. Grodd feels too, if it's saturated, it's not coming out on here very well, but this is more muted than this one is. This feels like a better fit.
Oh, in
whereas
terms of like brightness or something like that.
Yeah, something, which is, again, I don't have language for, but this, which is Tunet, this works with this one. So it's still purple and green, but I don't know if you can see, these have the same kind of feel to them, to me. And these two have the same feel to them. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense.
So I wouldn't combine, again, that. Not really, because it feels like this one's too intense for this one. Whereas this
I kind of like that.
Well, I mean, again, it's people's preference,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes things, yeah, you can just like throw things together that you wouldn't normally put, but I don't know, some of them just stand up. For some reason, this, to me, like probably the purple with the pops of green. I might not do this sweater in this combo as I'm thinking about it, because I think what I would like is more of infinitive, or infinitive, with little bits of green. Whereas this sweater I think is gonna be pretty equal when it comes to the combo. You're gonna get a lot of the same, like probably the second color will be slightly less, but about the same, I would think.
Yeah.
So that might make some change. And I will try to tell you the names of these colors, but I'm gonna probably mess them up because some of them look similar. But we can put them in these amazing show notes that we're talking about that hopefully, yeah. So yeah, go ahead.
So here's my invitation for you who, those of you who are watching,
the throngs.
is, you know, one of the things about Nutiden is that they are released in sort of collections, and it's common that the collections sort of sell out. And so some of these combinations you might have in your stash if you are a Nutiden person, you might not. I've recently seen that if you go on Ravelry and sort of check, look at sort of stashes, that sometimes you can find somebody who is offering up their Nutiden projects. But more so than that, I would invite you to look at the colors and just kind of see what you're drawn to, because I will say that one of the things I learn about color work is that my sort of planning cognitive process sort of works but doesn't work. Yes. In the sense that I often think, I don't pull my stash out, I often think, oh, I'd like some blue in my wardrobe, or oh, I want this color to go with this color. And then when it comes together, it doesn't necessarily work. Yep. But that I will see a color combination, often a color combination that she has put together, and I'll be like, oh my God, I have to have it. And then that's how I end up knitting. I love that. So invitation for you to just see what it is that you're drawn to, and allow that to inspire your own kind of search for the colors that speak to you. Yes. Yes. And I mean, this would be a place where if you were a swatcher, it would be very helpful, because you get to really look and say, oh, do I like this one? Or maybe I like this one more. But you know, knitting at the end of the day, I hate ripping out. I do hate ripping out, which is funny because I love knitting. So why wouldn't I just want to do more knitting? But I do hate ripping out, but I will say that sometimes that's just what you do, right? Yeah. Like you start with it and you're like, it's not right. There was one combo for this one. Actually, so I was gonna be a darker color, and then I really wanted it to be this one. I was gonna do this with a light, oh, got a little orange in there. I want it to come along. I know. So I was gonna do it like this, but actually, while here it looks like that should be fine, like that you'd be able to think about it. In this particular pattern, you couldn't see, like they were so close together that it didn't work, and so I actually had to abandon this one and go to the really dark, whoops. So this is what actually looks like in the plate, and so if you put it up this way, like this is a color combination that I was like 100% I want to knit in this, because I love low contrast, I love neutrals, but I guess when it came time to actually knit it up, it didn't have enough contrast. Not enough. And sometimes that works, and in this one, I think it's the particular pattern, because you really need that distinction between them because it's so small. Like you need this little slip stitch
to make it. If you can't see that, then the pattern looks different. I have actually considered going back to this one for this project, because I think that you're gonna see the pattern as it goes, and so you're gonna learn, your eye will learn what the pattern is, so it'll look for it in it. So I think that these could actually still work well, but in the one that I did. I know, right? Like those are so beautiful.
So I was, so I'm somebody who has had many failed color work sort of combination things, because I always, like this, like to me, I'm like, oh my God, this is so much contrast, I can't do it. Whereas this, I'm like, this is just the right amount of contrast. So apparently, what you can do is you take a photo of the colorways and then you put it in like whatever black and white to kind of see if there's enough contrast. We've never done a color work class before. We probably would benefit from having vocabulary. Sorry.
Right.
But it does so much, it does matter in terms of the pattern. I think one of the things that's really exciting about this motif is I think it's really forgiving in that way.
I do too. I do too.
Whether you knit it single-stranded or double-stranded.
I do too, yeah.
I would die if you did that combination. I would have to twin knit.
Well, I mean,
one.
Well, and then I thought about actually a very simple, no, this wasn't, no, oh, no, I wasn't gonna put this, sorry, I was thinking more about a green, like these ones together. I don't know if you can see in this one has a bit of the yellow. This is glimped, I think, with Dvala. This was actually the one I did my shawl in. So whatever that is. Yeah.
It's so actually, this is a really good moment to show how things don't look the same knit up as in the skein.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, oh, that's perfect, isn't that?
Yeah.
Because this looks so much greener. This has more of a brownie feel there.
But like, I think this is why everybody says that you should swatch. I don't always, but.
I can also say life keeps going if you don't.
Yeah.
It works out.
Just
it's all fine. It's all fine. Anyway, yeah, so I just love this. And then as I was doing that, also like I mean, a pink and a green. Like Ljus with Dvala. Oh my God. This actually, this is not my normal, but this, I don't think this is gonna come out, but this is Adikbat with Flisselin, which I'm making a sweater in right now, and I think you're gonna make the same. I'm doing a test knit for 100 acre wool. And this Flisselin is just absolutely gorgeous, but there's something about this combo that I'm really considering. And remember too, with this pattern, what's so cool is that you can decide which one is the main color and which is the contrast, because like the black, like the darker one with white motif will be a different kind of sweater than white with black. So fun stuff. Are you gonna show something?
Well, what I was gonna say is, I find that things that are really high contrast, there's like a particular like look. So this is Badger and Bloom by Anne Benzel. I knit this in Raw and Grodd, and this is a sweater that I knit. I love the process of knitting it, and I never wear it because I find it too bold.
Too hot. Too bold?
Too bold.
Well, this is just, can I just say, Jackie feels like this is too saturated. Knit is too saturated, so that's where we're starting with.
But you know that when you have high contrast like that in sort of like a classic black and white, like this is actually a very, very deep greeny brown with sort of a cream, that it creates a really different look than if you do something that is sort of lower contrast. And that's kind of why I played with these swatches, because actually this is Ljus and Snö. And I've just reversed.
One, oh no, okay, good.
Yeah,
I thought you were gonna say one's high contrast. I'm like,
no. But to see how how different
Jackie, you're so prepared.
Looks.
Look at you.
How different it looks to kind of have this as the background color and then to switch it up. That I mean, obviously it's the same color work and the same pattern, but I feel like it feels different.
Yeah, it does. It has a different, and that's the thing with colors, right? Like it just, they pull so much from you and how you work with them. I again am of the opinion that things work themselves out and they're what they're meant to be with our knitting. So that's probably why I often don't swatch, because it's just gonna work out the way it's supposed to work out. So then I guess I'll just show a few more possibilities. This what was that one called? It was
Pupilin.
Pupilin, nice. With Harden. I mean, that to me is just, I'm looking at Jackie going, I don't know.
But then when you knit it, I'm gonna want one.
You're gonna want, I know, I just love it. Or like a yellow and a blue. This was Hafta.
Stila.
Oh God, Jackie. Amazing. More pinks and that's Salicat or whatever, Salicat with a pink. Greer. Whew. I feel like this would be like, Nutiden quiz. I don't know what it was about this combo. This might happen for me. This is Kwatch with Lola, and I almost didn't even buy Kwatch. I was like, I think I've got enough colorways like this, but there is just, it's not really coming out. And I think I'm gonna do purple with the white.
That's what I was thinking,
right?
Is this one is the background, right?
Yes.
Oh, I like that one.
Something about, this is kind of it, right? When you're looking at it and you're like, these are beautiful, but some of them you're like, I just wanna look at you a bunch.
Yeah.
That's probably a good idea.
Do you think about like, when you are thinking about casting on a project, maybe you don't actually have this process because you just see things and you're like, you must be a sweater. Yes. Do you think about what you have in your wardrobe, what colors you like to wear, or do you start with any of that kind
I wish I did, because I should say I do. I will think of stuff and be like, you know what I really need is a cardigan.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to choosing, I will very easily get distracted by things that I really like. That might not be exactly what I was looking for. Yeah. But I do, yes. So sometimes the answer is yes, and many times, we were talking about shawls and how I don't wear a lot of shawls, and Jackie, you made the good point. You're like, well, a lot of your knits are very intricate and have a lot of color, like intensity, and like a shawl almost needs something that's very plain, which I very rarely knit. So now I'm gonna try to be doing that, but then even as I was gonna knit a very plain thing, I was like, well, it's gotta be in this, you know, like, but
well, that would work.
Well, it would, but it's not, yeah. Anyway, oh, we're losing our light.
Losing light.
Anyway, these are just, I don't know, more oranges. And these are the things that I gravitate to, but there are lots of, do you want to show some of your other knits, color combos that you've had to get maybe more of a, not quite as intense?
So, this is the Mirror Shawl.
Oh, beautiful.
By Natasha Hornby.
Gorgeous.
This is my color. This is my color sense. So this was in Eska and Midwinter.
Beautiful. It's so
monochrome.
This is single?
This is single.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And this is less than 200 grams for this. Like, I also have never blocked this because it's just
look at
infinitely beautifully long.
If you think about that in two, let's say, fingering skeins, that's 2 fingering skeins. Yeah. Like, I don't think other wool would do that, like get that long.
And this color combination is 100% inspired by the sample, which was in this color, and I was like, ooh, monochrome.
And they're held, like, look at that. That's a lot of wool. Like you get a lot.
It was the greatest. This is beautiful. This was one of my favorite knits as well.
Gorgeous.
It's funny though, because I rarely experiment with color work in sweaters, but I can do it in shawls.
Oh, that's so pretty.
So this is the Amp shawl by Natasha.
I feel like I'm just gonna have to leave some of these here.
Yeah. Oh. And so this is Verenaden and Varflod. And actually, you know, when I knit it, I wondered whether I liked this color combination of the kind of the gray and gold.
Gorgeous.
Looks quite good on screen.
It looks quite good in person. I mean, this is like, you know, I love a blue with a, so it's a blue and a brownie gray?
Like brownie gray?
Yes. Yeah. And gold. Oh,
and gold. Actually,
it looks perfect with your hair and your coloring.
So this is I don't know if this is gonna show, but it's the same gray.
This?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So this is the thing that I find magical about color work, and also magical about yarns that are, I want to say heathered, would that be fair? Yes. That have like multiple tones in them, is that I feel like these look like 2 different grays.
Yeah, they really do.
But they are actually the same colorway. But set against like another color, it looks completely different. So
Yeah. Beautiful. And what about, do you want to talk about the Harry Potter sweater?
Yeah. Okay.
This was the first time I saw it right before we podcasted, and I was like, oh my God. Oh.
So this is, do you want to put it on?
Yeah. Oh, put it on?
Yeah.
Yes, I might not take it off.
So that was knit in Corp and Stardust and Barflood.
Oh.
So this is maybe one of my most proudest things that I've ever made. It's knit in single strand, and it is based on a pattern called Hogwarts: A History, which, let me see if I can actually pull that up, which was a pattern that was designed to be knit in fingering. And when I saw these colors together, I was like, I'm a Ravenclaw, and these are Ravenclaw colors, and I must knit it. But what ended up happening is I was completely off gauge. So I just had to knit it. And because it was a top-down round yoke sweater, I cast on the neckline, did a bunch of ribbing, and then the very cool thing about this sweater is that it's by Megan Regan. Let me see if I can find the actual pattern, the original sample. But it's a top-down yoke sweater that came with a whole bunch of motifs, and so you could put the motifs together in the way that you wanted. The gauge was 25 by 32. I cannot remember what mine actually was, but it was not that.
No.
And so I learned how to basically knit, throw together a motif that fit the number of stitches that I had on the needle, and then I did the increases as per pattern, but sort of made up the motif. I probably followed the pattern up until here, and then realized, oh, the motif that I want with like the snitches will not fit, and so it is a little bit puckery because I just started throwing increases in wherever when I needed it.
I think it's gorgeous.
But this is kind of my plan with this KAL.
Yeah, so this is single,
yeah,
right?
This is single.
Okay, I'm gonna make mine single.
To either start it, I mean, I think it has to be a raglan for this particular thing in order to make this motif work. But I do kind of want to knit it top down so that you can try as you go, which is how this ended up happening.
Yes.
But looking at it now, first of all, it looks so good on you.
See it, like, if you can see,
Second of all, maybe I should do something high contrast. Because when I'm looking at that, I'm quite happy about it. I mean, it's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous.
But it is interesting. Like, I think that in this case, it's three colors, I think, right?
Yeah.
And the three are so important. Like, every one of them is important. Like, you need that I'm glad you went with a very white, like the white, you know, and then like had these other, oh, it's just beautiful. Like, I literally saw this and I was like, oh, it's so beautiful.
What else do I show?
Knitting.
So this is my current work in progress. This is the Lunet shawl by Natasha Hornby. I love Moonstruck knits.
Yes,
I love
me
Moonstruck
too.
knits so much. And so this is super low contrast.
Yes, I feel it's blowing out a bit, yeah, or maybe a little bit there. That's a bit better.
So that's the same gray that's in there.
Oh.
And so, you know, I like how that looks, but then you hold this up and my little neutral heart is just like,
you can't go wrong. That's also just gorgeous. Why wouldn't you can do that too?
So
it's all good.
So here are my questions for you if you've made it this far with us.
Just so you know, we were like 15 minutes. We'll do a 15-minute podcast. Yeah, 53 minutes. Okay.
Is high contrast or low contrast? What color are you drawn to, obsessed with right now, that you really want in your wardrobe? And are you feeling like you want a sweater or a cowl or hat or a pair of socks? Mittens. Because I think all of those things are possible. And so there will be more details, more official details about the knit along in the description box in a future episode. But essentially all you need to participate with us starting on September 1st is to use this motif. However you want.
That's right.
with whatever yarn that you want. And our hope is that the knit along will do all the wonderful things that knit alongs do, which is create community and allow us to be inspired by one another, but to be inspired by all of the unconventional fun ways that people are hopefully gonna play with this in a sweater, if you want to go by having a pattern that's already written, or to kind of make something up.
Yeah, and even with a sweater, because I'm probably gonna do the regular sweater. Like I might make a few adjustments, but I'll probably be like pretty conventional and like stick with the very like the sweater. Like that's what I want. I saw Ellen's and I'm like, I want that.
Yeah.
So totally good if you're like me and you just want to like make the thing that you know you want. But we also will love seeing other versions and other ideas that people have.
You are gonna have to do math though, because
I know I do.
We don't have a English pattern.
Well, we have. Yeah.
So I'm gonna do the math. I'm gonna do the math because I'm also gonna knit it in that way.
I also was thinking I was gonna look at Ellen's and I was gonna ask her for a picture of her actual thing, and then I was just gonna count the different sections.
Like how many pattern repeats there are.
And then I'm gonna just, and then I'll measure and then I'll just get that. So I might actually start bottom up. That might be helpful.
That'd be really fun if you did yours bottom up and I did mine top down.
Yes. Except for when I get to the top and I go, but Jackie, I don't actually understand.
So
how do I get this
the sweater is, I mean, if you're a genius and can figure out some other construction, we're gonna do raglan.
Oh yeah, I love raglan.
We're gonna do raglan,
my favorite,
because that's a pattern that we've both knit a lot of raglan sweaters, are comfortable with raglan sweaters, and I'm comfortable with sort of doing sweater math around raglan sweaters. But
plus I really like in hers, there's a very distinctive, like I'm gonna make sure that line, the raglan line, is very clear.
It's clear.
I love that look with this pattern.
Do you know what color you're gonna do?
No, but I will say, as I say, this really is speaking to me. Ooh. As Caroline from Hunter Oak Ear says, she often says like this makes me weak, and I'm like, oh, this does make me weak.
One makes me
I'm
weak
so surprised. But there's something about this that makes me weak too. It's not quite coming up, but in person, I don't know, and I don't have a black and white. And actually, speaking of the bingo ball, every year one of the bingo things is that whether you've knit a black and white sweater, and I'm like, I've never knit a black and white sweater.
I love how you just said that you don't plan. The bingo ball isn't like January, or it's like in December and it's July and you're planning to get a square on the bingo ball.
Well, it crossed my mind. Will I make it happen?
Oh yeah.
No, but I would say, hey, I could get a square on the bingo ball if I do this, but I'm not sure if I will. By the way, sorry, I have to show one more because I was saying with Loretta, because she was gonna knit with Liv, and I was like, there's something about she was asking me what color, and before even combining them, I'm like, I just feel like Brenta should go with that, and I just think that's so gorgeous.
With this one as the background color?
I think so, except the only thing I would say, eventually I'm knitting in this combo for sure. The only thing I would say about this is that Liv has such intensity in it that I feel like actually most of the things I picked here didn't have a lot of variegation, because I think in that kind of pattern you want it to be pretty bold, and you're gonna lose all the intricacy of Liv in this particular pattern potentially. So, but because she was knitting it was a different sweater she was thinking about. Anyway, I just love that.
But you know what? So this kind of fascinated me. I want to talk a little bit about sort of choosing colors that are quite even, or colors that are variegated. Is that, so in this swatch, is it gonna show? I actually think that the this sort of pinkish color, this is Ljus. You can actually see the variegation really beautifully, definitely, which surprised me.
Yes, I'm surprised at that too.
And I think it's actually because the background color is so flat. Yeah. And so my initial thought was to knit it in Flisselin and Grodd. But I found, it's coming out quite nicely here. I found that because Flisselin actually has a little bit of variegation in the back, and so does Grodd, I felt like the pattern wasn't as clean.
I agree.
Some of this is probably also about color dominance, because I knit these swatches flat and I don't know how to deal with color dominance flat. Right. I know how to do it in the round. This pattern is likely going to be knit in the round, so it won't do that. But I think, like, I mean, this is my #1 contender
It's gorgeous.
because of the variegation.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas choosing a really variegated background yarn and a flat,
Yes.
not flat, I hate using the word
I
flat, but
know.
you know, even
Single color kind
sort of contrast. I
Yeah.
don't know that it came out as
I agree.
clean.
I agree.
So
then actually in this case, maybe I do
no,
need to
that's what I
swatch
was,
them.
I mean, if I had enough in my stash, that would be 100% what I'd do it in.
Well, between the two of us.
I know. So get a knitting bestie
Yeah.
who's
Who buys
stash
the
you.
same things and overbuys, so we always have enough. Always have enough.
Is there anything else that we haven't talked about?
I think we talked about a lot.
I think we talked about a lot.
I think this was super fun.
I hope
I
that you
liked
had
it.
fun with us. We certainly had fun.
Yes.
And technology wizardry pending.
Yes. This may
Um,
never see the light of day, but if it does, it's all because of her. I can say that right now.
So if you would like to follow along with us, in the description box will include sort of links to the our Ravelry group, our social media, in case you want to follow along with our knitting adventures, as well as all the hashtags, etc. if you want to follow along with the knit along.
Yep.
But I think
You can
that's
find
where
all this
we're...
wool.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Thank
And
you.
we are gonna have some kind of prizes. We
Yes.
haven't quite figured it out, but probably it will involve some Nutiden. Like we were gonna be, because we just need to share the love of
Yeah,
this
so
beautiful
we
wool.
have, one of the things we did talk about this podcast is that we're going to give away parts of our stash. And the idea is to give it away sort of intentionally, in the sense that we're going to ask people when we get to the giveaway part, which this is not, sort of ask people what it is that they love, what it is that's inspiring them, what it is that they feel like they sort of need in their life, in their stash, in their knitting, and we'll give away in response to that, because this sort of creative play, that co-creative process is really inspiring to us.
Yes. And figuring out what fits for each person and like shared energy.
Yeah. So if you would like to co-create with us, then I'll invite you to leave a comment below with sort of what's inspiring you, what has inspired you, what inspires you, and hopefully if anybody is in need of creative inspiration, you can just go in the comments and kind of take a look.
Love that.
And we'll see you next time. Bye!